and welcome to the Grand Teton Music Festival's Backstage Pass, your weekly invitation to gather, to be in the company of your musical friends and colleagues, to learn from one another, and to connect with the entire GTMF community. My name is Eva Capoletti Chow, and I'm a violinist with the GTMF Orchestra, and I have been coming for almost 20 years.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jerry Ho. I'm the Associate Conductor for GTMF. And with us, we have Mike Richards, who has, on his day off, graciously come in to help us make this show possible. And he is taking care of all things technical and logistical. And so thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you, guys. Have a good time. We'll talk to you later.
So I'm really excited to see how many people are already joining us, Jerry. This is really cool. I want to say hi to Danny Loffer and Chris Pilgrim. And Allison Goodman came back from our viola panel a couple of weeks ago. Julie Coleman. So all of these awesome names, Nancy Good-Earl, Paul Murphy. Oh, Paul. Yay.
Wonderful to have them all here. It feels like since it is the 3rd of July and we're this would have been the eve of the beginning of the festival. I know that everybody would have been sort of piling into Jackson at this time. A lot of people would have been piling into Jackson. So of course we're sort of sorely missing that, seeing each other, seeing friends, seeing family, and having this opportunity to make music together. Eva, you and Phil would have been in the car probably pulling into Jackson right about now. And I chose this background today because this was 2 years ago when I was driving up. I think it was on the 3rd of July. This was the same. This was the sort of the breathtaking view that stirs the soul that we all come for. But are there things that you're going to do this weekend instead? You'll be celebrating the 4th of July in a different way.
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking about that. It just all feels so strange, doesn't it? I mean, it's hard to believe it's the 4th of July. Normally we would be getting ready. I would, be putting my hands around all the 4th of July music that is going to be happening at the Teton Festival, and it just feels just completely different. I'm wondering for you, Jerry, one of the things that keeps happening here is that like every evening somebody's blowing firecrackers, like every evening. And I'm understanding that it's happening kind of across the country. Is it happening in Houston?
Nothing here yet. We have the big show tomorrow, of course, but nothing's going on here. So it's just sort of, it doesn't feel like there's not much that feels like it's coming up to 4th of July yet, but maybe that's okay. People will stay home and be safe.
What's the big show you're talking about?
Oh, just the fireworks show that we have every year. That's still going forward here in Houston, and I remember my first night there in Jackson, seeing the beautiful fireworks show. I had pulled up into town just right before it. It was just getting dark, and I still remember that.
And I was just thinking about that one time we were doing a concert, and the fireworks went off somewhere in the middle of it. We had to stop the concert. I'm wondering if anybody else in my attendees remembers that concert that we had to stop for a birthday party fireworks.
Barbara Butler, she raised her hand. She does remember that.
Is that right? Thank you, Barbara.
Today we have Susan Gulkis Assadi. We have, of course, our esteemed Maestro Donald Runnicles. We have Adelle Runnicles, and we have Simon Wood. It's wonderful to have all of you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Inviting us.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Nice to see everybody online who I'm not getting a chance to meet this year.
You'll get to meet them afterwards. We're going to make sure if you come out to the Spur.
Excellent.
Of course, I think all of you can go without introduction, but maybe for the people who will be watching a recording of this and who will be meeting GTMF for the first time, maybe you could give us just a short introduction of yourself, where you are right now, and how long you've been with the festival. Susan, would you like to kick us off, please?
Sure. And what you just said about people joining and not knowing about the festival, if you haven't heard about the festival, you're in for a treat the next time you can hear us all play together, because this festival is unique and special and amazing. First time I came was 1995, so that makes this the 25th year. Although I did miss a couple summers for the birth of my girls, they were both born in July. But needless to say, it's been many, many years, and it's hard to imagine the summer without the whole festival together. And I will very much miss everybody, but I hope everybody is healthy and staying safe and finding silver linings.
It's wonderful to have you here, Susan. Thank you so
you.
much for taking the time to be with us.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Simon, you're next on my screen. So I know there are a lot of people who are, we've received emails from you, we've heard from you, but a lot of us are meeting you for the first time. Would you please do the honors and introduce yourself to all of us?
Sure, happy to do so. I mean, briefly, you know, I'm originally a musician and briefly a conductor. And that was what I studied. And then subsequently I spent almost 10 years in the record business. And then since then I've been working with orchestras. And, you know, in the last 20 years or so, I've worked for the Philadelphia Orchestra. I ran the New Jersey Symphony. I ran the Royal Scottish National Orchestra and the Seattle Symphony and the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And it's been really, really, really fun to be here in Grand Tetons. Getting to know everybody here and getting to know this wonderful organization. And I'm just heartbroken not to be able to take part in the festival. But I'm going on from here after Labor Day into my new role as President and CEO of the League of American Orchestras. And you can be sure that I will be booking my vacation time for next August to come back here and see you all in the flesh. So looking forward to it. Happy to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. And of course, our wonderful couple here, our esteemed maestro, and of course his lovely wife, Adelle.
Ladies first.
My name is Adelle Eslinger Runnicles, and you might find it funny to hear that I feel a newcomer to the Grand Teton Music Festival, although I think this is my 13th or 14th, not sure on my math. So it sounds quite long, but relative to this esteemed organization and many, many of the orchestral players, I am a bit of a newcomer. I am principally an opera coach, and at the festival I am helping coordinating the chamber music programs, and you'll see me often in the back of the orchestra playing the celeste or sometimes a keyboard part. And it's, what an organization. Over to my husband.
I am a conductor. I have never been an executive director. I could never be an executive director. I have such admiration, Simon, for you, and particularly in the context of these extraordinary and very surreal months. I've been music director, when did I start? 2006, I think. I came as a guest primarily. Well, I came as a guest, and there was rather serendipitously a position open here, and I think it was a certain Richard Brown who sidled into my then office and popped the question. So I've been music director of this esteemed organization, well, it's quite a while, 14 years. We live otherwise in Berlin as music director of the Deutsche Oper Berlin, where I certainly spend 4 or 5 months of the year. And yes, we're sitting actually in my office here at the eerily quiet Walk Festival Hall, but it's great, albeit virtually, to be part of the family.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much to have the two of you on, and all of you to see you and to share this time with us and with everyone in the audience. I know that for all of the orchestral musicians, it's a very busy time during the year, and all of a sudden things came to a screeching halt, and we weren't in our usual routines. And maybe because we were able to come out of the routines, if there were things that you had a chance to notice, or things that you didn't had a chance to think about, anything that was new that you could share with us, with our viewers. Susan, would you like to start us off? I see you smiling there.
Probably for everyone, what's so interesting about this time period is that there was really kind of it began so quickly, and we didn't know how long this was going to last, and we still don't know how long this is going to last. So I have to say that at first, for me, there was this flood of relief just to have a little bit of time. And you know, as it's gone on, of course, the relief is a little bit of a guilty relief, because I know people are really suffering, and I'm very aware and very grateful that we're all healthy and fine right now. But this relief of just having some time to do whatever, to practice something that I've wanted to practice, that I don't have to perform, that I just want to play for fun, or to go on a walk with my family, or to cook something, or to read books. I mean, so I was so excited to have all the time to do that at the beginning, and I did all those things, and then I practiced a little bit, and then I did those things again, and then I didn't practice for a while, and then I started practicing again. And so I just kind of feel a little bit of a roller coaster, and I'm really just trying to appreciate the good things about having the time, this found time. And now I'm starting to think that this found time is not going to last forever. And there are some things that I really would like to do before it's over. And so I'm kind of thinking a little bit more seriously about that now. But yeah, those are the things. I've done a lot of really fun things, lots of exercising, I did Pilates. I've done Pilates with Adele on Saturday mornings, which has been really fun. I've taken some good hikes in the Seattle area, outside of Seattle. I've read some great books. I've cooked wonderful recipes. I've enjoyed being with the family. And so we're all good. And I've really kind of guiltily enjoyed this time.
No, I think you've hit the highlights for almost everybody here. I'm sure if you could see everyone in the audience, I'm sure they would all be nodding at various points to the things that you've mentioned. As we've spoken with musicians, I remember Madeline Atkins speaking to that, just having time to sort of catch up and play for oneself rather than always being on this roller coaster.
I will say one thing that Susan said I totally agree with, is just this idea of kind of having guiltily enjoyed it. You couldn't have said that better, actually, because, you know, one sees people, so many people suffering so much, and we see our you know, people across our profession suffering so much, and we see people suffering from illness, and, you know, we see you know, everything that has gone on through the Black Lives Matter movement, and we're thinking about racial violence, and we're seeing so much suffering, and yet there have been some extraordinary pleasures, not least of which for me has been having my kids home from college. I've got 2 kids who are both music students, one at Oberlin and the other at University of Southern California, and just having them home and having music in the house again has actually been a kind of a joy, and sort of unexpectedly and definitely enjoyed that.
That's wonderful.
I would just pick up on some of what both Simon and Susan have spoken about, and that is to not downplay the suffering in the world, and the ill health and the violence and the turbulence in governments. But we're all parents, I believe, on this screen, funnily enough, and so you must all share our feeling. That is, you're always not quite doing your best for either your musical career or your parenting for your family. And to me, this time has been the greatest gift in that regard, because we don't have babies anymore, but we've had so much teenager time, and the headspace, the mind space to just sit with them, talk with them, be with them, even if it's not remarkable time or remarkable experiences. And to me, that's a real gift, because from the moment when those tiny people are born, you're like, oh, I should be practicing. Oh, I should be teaching my child. Oh, you know, there's always something else we ought to be doing in our minds. And to me, that's been really the greatest gift.
I think also the biggest shock is the fact that Adele will see me every day for the last 3 months.
And we're still together.
And we're not exactly social distancing, but we're allowed to be this close, by the way, just in case somebody calls in. No, quite seriously, having been at home, having had family dinners every
night.
Every night, the
And
same
they want to
delicious
eat
salad.
every night.
What I find rather extraordinary, and this would interest me, what you all feel, what I've really missed, and it was the continued absence of this that I started to think, what is it that feels different? And I realize an awful lot of it is to do with the structure of my energies during a day. That there are, obviously for all of us as performers, 10 o'clock in the morning there's just something through years and years of practice. I mean, you could call it Pavlovian, but you know, the camera tone, the orchestra tunes just before 10 o'clock. And at 10 o'clock, it's show business. The light goes on. And usually for me, for 2.5 hours or for 3 hours, those next 3 hours I am on. I'm in charge or I'm participating, etc., etc. And then, of course, the afternoon is something of a, well, you rest a little, your energies are not at the highest level. And then same thing, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening. And that's ultimately, you know, how many of us have sometimes been going the wrong way in the traffic. Everybody's coming home at 7 o'clock and we are going to work at 7:30, at 8 o'clock, and sometimes thinking, oh, I wish I was going in the other direction. But the focus of our day is that time of night. And when that is not the case for 3 months, it's a very, very, it's almost a physical reaction to it. And I really can't describe it more than being something that, and I would say it's really something I miss. I miss this focus of a day. I miss the structure, the trajectory of a week of rehearsing. That Thursday, Friday, Saturday have a feeling of achievement. And even though we have daily achievements of course, being together with our wonderful family, that's an element that I profoundly miss.
In creating this Friday weekly invitation, and we finish this off, and usually Jerry and Mike and I sort of have a close down for ourselves, and especially when we all go off to the spur and we have our drink and we get to really talk. I said after the first one and the second one, I didn't realize I had the need, that what you're talking about, the need to sort of perform again and then have the laugh and the drink, and it all goes down for a little while, and then you work up again to something else. And in a weirdest way, this forum has been a little bit of that feels so familiar and calming somehow, in that, oh yes, okay, we got to something and it went well and it was within community, and now we get to celebrate a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all performers at heart, and that's why we do what we do. But we also, the opportunity to perform with each other is such a wonderful thing, and that's sort of a highlight of being with each of you in Jackson during the summer. Since we can't be there to make music together, I thought we could share at least a little clip of music. This is a request from Simon, actually. That was, of course, ALASSIO of the festival orchestra playing. And I know that just looking at some of the chats, people are tearing up just hearing that.
Simon, and we've talked about this a number of times, that for all the fact that we've known one another for so long and we share so much common, well, for orchestras that both of us at some time have worked with. And my love for Sibelius really began with Alex Gibson. Oh. Sir Alex Gibson conducting the then Scottish National Orchestra, what then subsequently the Royal Scottish. And I know I don't know if it's the Scottish, the landscape, but it was certainly his conducting. I mean, I would say that if he was certainly a huge influence on me, but it was his music, the performance of Sibelius that just set the coordinates for me.
It's funny you say that, Donald, actually, because one of my first experiences of Sibelius, although I grew up in London, but it so happened that it was Gibson's recording with the Scottish National Orchestra, the Sibelius II. And I didn't have much connection with Scotland then. Little did I know that I would eventually go on to marry someone who grew up in Scotland and was very connected in Scotland, and then lived there for 6 years and ran the National Orchestra. But so what I found, what I began to understand when I lived in Scotland, was there is definitely a kind of a Nordic affinity between Scotland and the Scandinavian countries. And Sibelius's music is beloved of Scottish audiences, and more so perhaps than any other country that I've been in. I mean, it is in the US as well, but it struck a special chord there, I think, and it's hard to quite say what that is, but you're right, and a lot of that goes back to Alexander Gibson. He was one of the people who championed Sibelius' music very, very early in the UK.
For those who perhaps don't know this name, Alexander Gibson created the Scottish Opera way back in the 70s, and that was the company that brought the very first ring cycle to Scotland ever. And in the audience was this young Scot, yours truly, and once again, that changed my life, and that was Alexander Gibson, a great, great conductor who sadly died quite young. But yeah, so the Sibelius certainly resonates with me too.
A funny other connection with Gibson, of all the most weird connections. My very, very first job in the music business was working in the corporate sponsorship department at the London Philharmonic in the late 80s. And the person sitting next to me on the next desk in the marketing department then was Johnny Gibson, who was one of Alex Gibson's sons. And it was only when I went to Scotland, like, I don't know, 15 years later, and I got to know Gibson's wife. I'm blanking on her name now. You'll remember. You knew her, certainly. What was her name?
Oh, gosh.
Anyway, that we can put all this together. So anyway, it's too boring, but it's for most people. But it's just interesting how, in the music world, things do have a habit of kind of coming back on themselves and connecting in strange ways many years later that you didn't realize at the time.
Susan, I know that I was talking a little bit with Simon about Sibelius, and he had mentioned that in Seattle that you guys had recently done a cycle of the symphonies.
Yeah, we did. I mean, how many years ago was that, Simon? You were still here.
I want to say it was 2016, something like that.
I don't think I knew that I loved Sibelius as much as I did until we played them all together. And it was so cool having that, time period where it was one symphony after another, and you could kind of hear evolutions and things that changed and things that stayed the same. And it was really special time. And going back to your other question, when you were talking about, Donald and Ava, you were talking about things you miss. What I really miss is the sound of the live orchestra. I mean, I'm enjoying listening to these clips, but for me, the sound of being in the middle of the orchestra, I miss that sound so much. And yeah, those Sibelius symphonies were really special to do all in a group.
Yes, and I mean, I think we all miss the vibrations in the air, just feeling our bodies sort of pulsate from the sound, especially from as a violist, being really in the center of the orchestra. You can really feel everything going on around you. I know that at least for the next few months, 6 months, where everything is a little bit more distant, we're going to be playing more chamber music and such. All the people who are in the audience now have had such wonderful experiences playing chamber music, either with you or on the series at the festival. Any thoughts about how we should move forward and now this sort of next few months?
Well, it seems to me this is the perfect moment in the whole world for chamber music and the art song recital. And I'll let Donald tell you about this Das Rheingold in Berlin. We've just had 5 performances of the Jonathan Dove version, which is about 100 minutes. So it's rather not particularly shortened and pretty wonderful. But before I let Donald talk about that, I would just say, to pick up on what you're saying, Susan and Eva, that this living in that sound world for the first time in months was sensational and cannot be replicated by the finest speaker set or, you know, whatever sound system you have at home. It's just not the same. Donald, do you want to talk about that?
Well, of course, we could only do it under unusual circumstances. It happens to just be part of the Deutsche Oper structurally, architecturally, that there is a large middle area where a lot of scenery is stored. So it's outside, but because, of course, the weather shouldn't be affecting the scenery, there is a small roof. And around there's also a parking garage. That's where a lot of our patrons park. It's not a particularly sexy part of the world, but it just happens to be like a quadrangle in the center of our opera house. And that's where we thought, okay, if we're not allowed to perform inside, but let's perform outside. So we went out, and there were 22 musicians altogether. And this was a big thing. And I went down, and they started to play in about 22. And as Adele said, this arrangement, taking an 85-piece orchestra down to 22 is quite an achievement, and it's really quite masterful how he's done it in terms of the instrumentation. But I went down and just let them play the first, of course we all know, or many of us know, the first beginning of Rheingold with that E flat, and then it becomes a B flat, and then the Rhine begins to move. And I went down to listen to it, thinking, oh my God, what is this going to sound like? And I went down, and you know, half the administrative staff was standing down, just waiting to hear. And I went down to listen to it, and I saw people openly crying, people who I had always considered sort of these hardened administrative types who were just so moved, because after so long, there was this, Jerry, you said there was these live vibrations. It was an incredible moment I'll never forget. And yeah, Susan, as you say, it really is. There's something about just, and I'm sure that I'm sure one day we'll be able to tell how all these electrical currents are moving around and jumping between us. But as I think I mentioned on a previous program, that music in video or streaming or coming out of your monitor is like a cold flame. And when you are in the midst of that live sound, oh my goodness, it's the log fire concept. And yeah, it was, and I would also just add to that they were all sitting the mandatory 6 feet apart from one another, and the winds were 8 feet away from the strings. And it was fascinating to me that after the first 15 or 20 minutes, you would never have known that they were all sitting so far away from one another. That is to say, I think the alchemy that happens between musicians is not necessarily because they're sitting right next to one another. I'm not suggesting that we should always have this kind of distance. But there's something about when people really want to make music together and they're really good, it doesn't really matter whether your colleague is 3 feet away from you, 2 feet away from you, or 6 feet away from you. If you're on the same wavelength, the ensemble was extraordinary. And it most certainly wasn't because of me.
Although you weren't bad.
Thank you. I wasn't bad.
All of us are thirsting for live music, and we're I know that Danny Laufer is out in the audience right now, and I know that yesterday in Atlanta, I was watching a video that he was playing a quartet out in the Botanical Gardens, and I know that everybody somewhere, we're slowly trying to somehow bring that about, and it's wonderful to know that it's going to get there somehow or another. Eva, are there questions or comments that you can share with us from everybody who's out there?
Absolutely. We've got lots of different kind of comments, lots of things all the way along, actually, as different parts of the conversation is happening. There's lots of conversation. I'm seeing here from Philippe Chow that Mahler 4 is reduced as well. and that might be an option in these times of reduced numbers being able to.
That was what, on May the 1st of this year, the so-called Europe concert, the Berlin Philharmonic, performed in the empty Berliner Philharmonie with their new music director, Kirill Petrenko, and it was a very, very poignant occasion. And that was that small version of Mahler 4.
I don't think anybody's going to be doing a chamber music Mahler 8 anytime now.
No, I don't think so. I think they'd have to change their identity or go into some kind of witness protection program.
I really wonder actually if there will be a call for the big works, because there is this feeling of wanting the full complex sound of a full orchestra. It'll be really interesting when you're needing to come up with the season's repertoire, whether or not there will be more longing for that.
I personally agree with, I personally feel that very, very strongly. I mean, you know, for me, the sound of 100 musicians together is, I don't know, it's like, it's the reason why I've been in this business for 25 years, because I get to hear that, you know, multiple times a week. And so, yes, that physical presence of that sound, definitely. It's the you know, I definitely thirst for those large works.
Yeah.
Simon, could you hang around a little longer? Because I could program 8 weeks of 100 musicians next year.
Yeah, that's right. That would be great.
You wouldn't have a problem with that, would you, Simon?
None at all. I liked very much Juan de Gomar said, he said after my Mahler 8 comment, he wrote Symphony of 100. Nice comment.
Well, I really don't, the Mahlerians wouldn't let you do that.
Just to pivot to something a little bit more lighthearted is just sort of what fun things you have been doing or will be doing since we won't have a chance to be enjoying each other playing music. Anything you're looking forward to, or any projects that have been going on that you put off for years that you're finally getting to finally cross off the list?
A better forehand.
A better forehand. How about you, Susan? I know that before I was going to say today is Abby's birthday, right?
It is. It's her 17th birthday today.
17th birthday. So do you guys have anything special planned for tonight or this weekend?
We are socially distancing, celebrating. I mean, we're having a family dinner, and then she's having some friends over outside to watch an outside movie on a screen. So 5 of her girlfriends are going to sit on chairs in the yard and watch a movie. And yeah, it's fun. I mean, a lot of innovative ways to celebrate different things, I have to say.
Adele, I know that several members from the orchestra have been following on your Pilates class on Saturdays. Susan, I know that Marta has been there. And so I think we should all be joining, continuing on this summer. Will you be continuing this summer, or is it something that you'll pick up again in the fall?
Oh, it's ongoing, and it's been really fun to connect with friends from all kinds of areas all over the United States, and some childhood friends from Canada, every time zone you can imagine. And when I began the class, I began in Germany, so I was doing it Saturday evening, which was really fun. But here it's Saturday morning, and it's really been wonderful. Yeah, it's something for everybody's body and everybody's life. And it's one of those things that our musician friends in particular now have time to experiment with.
Gail Williams wrote, Adele is great.
Oh, thank you, Gail.
Simon, I know that you're sort of in transition then. You're saying that you're moving to League of American Orchestras starting in September, and between being in Pasadena, have you had a chance to do some hikes and enjoy the time out there in the mountains? Are you a hiker yourself? Or?
Yeah, I love hiking, but I haven't really been here until this past weekend. I haven't really done very much. So I actually just got out today with my family. We got up early and went to Jenny Lake. And so I'm only just at the very beginning of exploring this beautiful place that all of you know so very well. And we got both Grand Teton and also Yellowstone to get around. So we're going to be blitzing it over the next few weeks, that I can tell you.
I think one thing we can all attest to is sort of not only the scenic beauty, but also the company of which we take the hikes. Just being out in nature with our friends, our close family, and spending time talking about life and music and everything else that we cherish so much, and it's definitely something that we all will miss this summer.
It's just true of this group that anyone that kind of comes new and says, I haven't been out on the trails, I wish for you that as you're new to us, that you would have the experience of how warm the entire population is. And
well, I did have a little bit of a taste of that, because a few years ago when I actually came, my wife and I just came here for a few days, and Rachel Swerdlow actually took us out and showed us around a little bit, and we went and looked for moose and buffalo, and I still remember that. Actually, I saw I had an amazing moment this morning. I saw the buffalo literally like that, not a buffalo, like what do you call it, a moose, literally like on the trail. I couldn't believe it. Like, look, it's right on the trail there. You probably can't see it.
Oh yeah.
Like, it was like 10 feet away from me. It was, I mean, I literally turned the corner and there was this moose. It's crazy. So
You
fantastic.
didn't pet it, did you, Simon?
I did not, no.
Okay, good.
My son was like, I want to get a portrait mode picture of him. And I was like, no, let's move on here.
I want to thank all of you so much again for being here. And please come again with us every Friday. Next week, Eva will be hosting.
Oh, it's going to be a special one. Next week, we're going to host Marcia Peck and celebrate what would have been her 50th year.
Oh.
So we're going to get to talk to her and she has some guests that she's invited to bring on to talk about that time and to just celebrate. This is somebody who knows practically the entire history of the festival. So, and she's just lovely.
Eva, Jerry, thank you both so much for doing this so wonderfully, so spontaneously, and gosh, we're lucky to have you.